Let me start off by saying that I don't understand the phobia of my kids towards broccoli. It's not like they dislike it or that they don't like the taste or the texture. They're genuinely like afraid of broccoli. Like if I bring a piece of uncooked broccoli in front of their face, they actually run away scared. I don't know if they picture it like some sort of living organism, like it's gonna start attacking them or growing legs out of nowhere. On a side note, broccoli does look a little bit weird. Let's be honest, like it kind of looks like it belongs on a different planet. It just doesn't look natural and there's something weird about it. But anyways, all vegetable bashing aside, let's get straight into today's video because I actually did want to talk about something that honestly is kind of old news at this point, but it's something that popped up in my radar, but that sometimes happens. I'll write down a topic that I want to touch on and then other news starts to hit and I start to really fall behind. And then by the time I know it, it's old news. And today's a perfect example of that. Now, before we get into the actual story or the little bit of news that broke, I think like a couple of weeks ago, I did want to clarify a couple of things because usually when I come out and I say something either for or against a manufacturer, people just assume that I'm biased. People assume that I have some sort of affiliation with any of these manufacturers when I clearly do not. Okay, Super 7 has never been one of my favorite manufacturers out there. I don't think I own any or any collectibles made from that particular OM. I maybe have like a reaction figure here or there that I picked up on sale, but I've often just kind of looked from the outside in just because it's a good solid line. They have some great collectibles. They work on some phenomenal IPs. They've done musicians, they've done animated series, they've done live action movies, even horror movies, action movies, things of that nature. They do a lot of like TMNT, a lot of He-Man. So I like admiring them from afar. I just don't feel like there's any value in them. The Super 7 Ultimates line at $55 makes absolutely no sense to me. I think they are more akin to what we should be paying for like NECA, which is closer to the $40 price point. I think they're drastically marked up and it makes absolutely no sense that people should have to go out of their way to pay $55 for a collectible that is as limited as the Super 7 Ultimates line, not just in articulation but also in sculpt work. Usually they're just lacking in a lot of like sculpted detail and paint applications and things of that nature, but they look really cool. Usually, as I said, great franchises. I love the packaging, I love the little sleeve that they come in. The reaction line is on the same wavelength. Like I absolutely love those figures. They work on some great shows, some great movies. They display incredibly well in that little retro card. There's some great artwork on the card itself, and then the figures, obviously they're scaled down. They're a little bit more simplistic, 5 points of articulation usually, but they display incredibly well. But similar to the Ultimates line, it's incredibly overpriced. Some of these Super 7 reaction action figures are going for about like $22 to $25 at this point, which is ridiculous. There is like 0% chance of me ever picking up one of those reaction figures at a $25 price point. It just makes no sense. I'm not sure exactly what they need to clean up or how they can tighten up their production process, but there's just no way those figures are worth $25 a pop. Having said that, Super 7 has actually been going through a really weird transition. I haven't heard of any other manufacturer coming forward and being as transparent as them. So I want to say like maybe 6-7 months ago, they actually announced that they were going to start laying off a ton of their employees, or at least a pretty good chunk of their employees, due in most part to the tariffs, right? There's this trade war going on. There's this trade dispute among countries, and apparently the people in control think that this is a good idea. And unfortunately, companies like Super 7 are bleeding money, and unfortunately they had to resort to letting go of some of their staff. I mean, they really had no choice here. As I said, we can criticize their production method all we want. We can talk about how expensive they are and how overpriced they are, but at the end of the day, the tariffs really affected them, and clearly other manufacturers are being affected, and we'll get into that in a little bit. However, the latest announcement from Super 7, and I'm getting this from Toy News International, their website, great website in case you guys are interested in just checking like action figure news and action figure content without, me spitting saliva into my mic and talking absolute nonsense. You can get it directly from the source. From time to time, I'll look up some of their articles or get some information that still isn't widely available, so go ahead and show them some love. But essentially, they came out and made a whole statement where they're going to be shutting down their like in-store brick and mortar flagship retail store. Now, personally, I didn't even know that Super 7 had a store. I guess they have one in San Diego, California, which I haven't been to San Diego specifically, but I've been to the area. I was in California a few months ago. Had I known that Super 7 had a store there, I probably would have visited it, just because I think it's cool. It's nice to have a retailer or a manufacturer have like a legitimate brick and mortar retail store, because they're kind of dying out. I mean, every time I look, there's like a new GameStop that is shutting down. There's actually a GameStop here locally at a mall that is supposed to be shutting down very soon. But it just, like, everywhere you look, there's a new GameStop that is shutting down or closing their doors. And it's kind of sad, right? I think Funko has a little store in Hollywood, California as well. Same thing. I'm not like a huge Funko Pop guy. I don't really collect them, but it's nice to see like an actual store from a manufacturer. I've heard they have like great decorations. They have a great setup, like amazing photo ops, and then exclusive merchandising there as well. So maybe in the foreseeable future, we see other retail or other manufacturers open up in-store retail stores, but the way that things are trending, clearly that isn't something that's viable. And Super 7 has announced that they will be closing down the store, and eventually they're going to transition almost all of their business to their online website, which, as I said, is just kind of sad to me, because I like seeing these in-person retail settings. But this all kind of ties back into how badly Super 7 is doing. And unfortunately, that's the world that we live in, right? Like, people are just really afraid, of manufacturers are very afraid to just come forward and just speak facts. Like, be completely transparent about the current political landscape and how that is severely affecting the action figure community and just the action figure industry as a whole. Because Super 7 has come out, they've been against tariffs, they've been against all of this buffoonery that's going on that's really affecting them. And unfortunately, I think that sometimes the message gets lost a little bit or gets criticized because of the messenger. Like, Super 7 is not your prototypical perfect manufacturer, and so people usually tend to poke holes in everything that they say, even though they're kind of speaking facts. The tariffs have done quite a bit of damage to the industry, and they continue to reel. Now, look, I know a lot of people hate when I bring up Diamond Select, but Diamond Select was also in that situation, and the tariffs, I think, were like the hair that broke the camel's back. Like, that was the tipping point. That was the final straw, and eventually I think they ended up declaring for bankruptcy, and then they got bought out by another company. I could be getting that story mixed up, but essentially Diamond Select almost went out of business there for a while, and that's just another prime example of what's happening within the action figure community or the industry. Also, it's worth pointing out that if it was just Super 7 coming out and speaking against the tariffs or trying to twist the narrative around, that would be one thing, right? I would be completely on board with bashing Super 7 into oblivion and just making fun of all of their collectibles, because I have done that in the past. But this is a little bit different, right? Because if it were just them with their price hikes or complaining about the tariffs or complaining about how difficult it is to continue manufacturing action figures in this day and age, with a political situation as it is, then maybe I think everybody that criticizes Super 7 would have a very valid point. Unfortunately, these manufacturers are staying quiet. They're not really saying too much about the tariffs. They're not talking about how they're laying off a ton of their employees, and a lot of it has to do perhaps with the fact that a lot of the people at the top potentially supported the political powers that are moving the pieces here. But at the end of the day, clearly they're hurting, because price hikes are here. We've been talking about this now incessantly for the last few months, or I should say even the last year or so, and every single big manufacturer that we collect, that we love, has had a price increase over the past few months. Whether it's McFarlane raising their regular DC Multiverse action figures from $19.99 to $22.99 to now $24.99. We've seen Marvel Legends spike up as well from, like $25.99 or $24.99 all the way up to $27.99. And it also depends on the figure itself. Sometimes they'll declare something like a deluxe figure when it really doesn't feel too much like a deluxe action figure, and they'll hike up the price even more. NECA also decided to mark up some of their action figures. They were going, I think, originally for $34.99, and now a lot of those are being offered at like $37, $38.99. If I'm not mistaken, Funko Pop also had a slight little increase in their retail prices. And let's not forget, one of my favorite toy manufacturers right now, Jaded Toys, actually spiked up all of their prices across the board, whether it was their Street Fighter action figure line, their cereal mascots, and then they recently actually released some new Mega Man action figures that are like slightly bigger than some of their previous releases, and they decided to mark them up to like deluxe price points all the way up to $34.99, which is absolutely outrageous. This is coming from, again, a toy manufacturer that people have been in love with, that people always hold in high regard. They put them up on a pedestal. They place them right up there with Hasbro and McFarlane and all the heavy hitters in terms of quality, in terms of engineering, and they also decided to increase their prices. So like I said, if it was just Super 7 coming out and speaking against the tariffs or complaining about how difficult it is to continue manufacturing action figures at an affordable price point, I would be on board with bashing them. But clearly there are other manufacturers that are being put in the same situation by this trade war, but there isn't that transparency. They're not just coming out and telling you what's wrong. They're secretly just doing it by increasing their prices. And people can say what they want. If you really want to believe that greed is playing a role in all of this, I can't really change your mind. And if it were just like a handful of manufacturers going through price increases, I wouldn't say anything. But the more and more of these manufacturers that are jumping on board, raising prices, I think it definitely raises some concerns. And you start to realize that it's not just one outlier. It's not just one manufacturer complaining or trying to use tariffs as an excuse. Clearly, it's affecting their business and they're having to make adjustments, whether that's firing in their employees, which we know Hasbro released an article, or it was printed in an article that Hasbro was going to fire quite a bit of their staff as well. So similar to Super 7, they're kind of, well, I should say Super 7 is a little louder, whereas in Hasbro tries to do it very nonchalantly, like very under the radar. They don't really cause too much of a stir. And I think that's one of the main reasons why people just assume that Super 7 is just completely outrageous and they're causing drama for no reason. But look, only time will tell exactly where this lands us. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I would love to see more of these like brick and mortar stores. Like, I don't know if other manufacturers have something similar, like Super 7 had their store, but maybe what if perhaps in the future Big Bad Toy Store had a flagship store somewhere, or Entertainment Earth, where you could go in there, maybe they had some like life-size statues or just something cool, maybe some neat cool backdrops where you could have some photo ops, just something cool to kind of immerse the consumer while they're shopping. I just think there's something special about these retail settings, and unfortunately I feel like we're just starting to go away from them the deeper we go into 2025, heading into 2026. As I mentioned, GameStop is a prime example, but I've also seen like Zia Records, which is kind of like a reseller here locally, but they carry a ton of great stuff like action figures, collectibles, anything pop culture related. You also have Toys R Us, which kind of flirts around with coming back every few years. Like, you'll see a random Toys R Us pop up here and there and then just die out eventually. I don't know, I feel like this is the end of an era, and the foreseeable future, it feels like all in-store purchases are going to be dead. Like, if you want collectibles, I think going into like 2027 perhaps, it's going to be mostly like 90% online stores. Everything else is going to be dead. Like, people are just, or these manufacturers are just not going to be interested in having brick and mortar retail settings when it just isn't feasible enough in the long run. But as always, this is just my personal opinion, my personal take. I just wanted to bring this to your attention because I think it is worth kind of just sitting down, digesting, pondering. It's not something that's like groundbreaking per se, but it is something that we can dialogue over and have conversations about. So let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to enjoy the hobby, pose your action figures, play around with them, and stay tuned because we are uploading action figure content on a daily basis. If you guys haven't noticed, I did try switching up the schedule a little bit on when I upload the videos. I'm going to try playing around with potentially early in the morning or late at night. It just depends on the video, depends on my mood. If I'm feeling something early or something late, I guess we'll do it. We'll see. I just want to see if there's like a better result with early in the morning uploads compared to late at night. So let me know your thoughts. Which do you prefer? I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. So stay safe out there. Enjoy the hobby. Put your action figures. Play around with them. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.